The story begins with a dark and terrifying scene. A young man is led to the guillotine, about to be executed, and that young man is Vacher van Baskerville, known as the hunting dog of the Baskerville family. True to his name, he devoted himself to serving his family and father. However, he was accused of conspiring with the Demon Clan and sentenced to death. Standing before the guillotine, he vowed that if he had the chance to live again, after biting his prey to death, he would never live the life of a hunting dog again. The moment the guillotine blade fell, his head collapsed, blood flowed out. He thought his life was over. Suddenly, he could open his eyes again, but the surrounding scenery had completely changed. He found himself in the middle of a room full of crying children, his body now that of a child. Vacher was extremely confused, wondering where he was. His body felt heavy. The noise around him, he couldn't believe it. Is this hell? It turned out that it was not hell but the territory of the Baskerville family, a row of magnificent houses filled with a gloomy atmosphere. In that room full of babies, a man with a cold face entered. He looked at the children with contempt and hatred in his eyes and attitude. This man is Hugo Le Baskerville, head of the Baskerville family. Then he walked between the rows of cribs with a few children on either side, uttering harsh words, saying that there were no special children here. He considered them nothing more than trash. As he approached the cradle where Vacher was lying, Vacher's silence caught his attention. He stopped and looked at Vacher, commenting that this child seemed quieter. Immediately, he ordered his subordinates to take this child to the cradle of sword, and his subordinates complied. Meanwhile, the man did not know that the child looking at him with angry eyes was Vacher. Vacher's heart was filled with hatred for the man who trapped and killed him, and that man was Hugo Le Baskerville. Vacher is now also a descendant of Hugo, and he is reincarnated as a child. In the past, Vacher used to live like a hunting dog, an illegitimate child. He trained in the worst conditions. A hound must do whatever it takes to complete the mission, from assassination, espionage, ambush, intimidation, and even more gruesome tasks. A hound who did all the dirty work. Everything to help the Baskerville family become one of the 7 great clans. Vacher is loyal to his family for a simple reason. He wants to be recognized by his family and by Hugo. 10 years after the gate to the demon world opened, the war with the demon race ended with humanity's victory. The reward for a hunting dog who has devoted his life to his family is abandonment. Vacher was executed for knowing too much. Vacher vows that he will never live that life again. The biggest challenge right now is Vacher's current body. He wanted immediate revenge, but with his newly born body it was impossible. He could only roll around helplessly. Luckily, he caught Hugo's attention and was taken to the cradle of sword as a good opportunity to become strong. Now it is necessary to become stronger. As it turns out, the sword screening in question is filled with tightly arranged sharp blades, and every child born into the Baskerville family must go through it once. Children are thrown into deadly and dangerous places where they must use their survival instincts to get through, whether that involves pain, crying, or fear. After passing the fencing round, they must cross the river Styx to test their qualities. Styx is the legendary river that turns children's bodies into steel, but only a few can endure it. Right now, Vacher is also pushing himself to the limit, trying his best to overcome the cradle of sword. His fragile body was full of wounds. Sharp swords cut through his flesh, causing continuous bleeding. Despite the unrelenting pain, he remained steadfast in his determination to succeed. To reach the river Styx first, he had to pass thousands of swords. In his previous life, he failed his siblings and could not achieve the desired results. However, this time will be different. He was determined to gain as much of the blessing of the river Styx as possible. Hugo and his entourage stood across the river, closely observing Vacher's every move. After escaping the sword screening area, he dragged his sore body to the riverbank and decisively jumped down. The 2 bodyguards accompanying Hugo were extremely surprised by the actions of the months-old child, while Hugo still stood there, without any reaction or emotion. Vacher's body slowly sank, his blood continuously seeping into the river water and turning it a deep red. The stream of water seeped through the cut in Vacher's body and bones, and he didn't think it would be so effective. He held his hand over his mouth, his face scrunched up in pain from the lack of oxygen. But he had made up his mind. He needed to endure as long as possible, no matter how painful it was. On the shore, the 2 bodyguards shouted frantically when they saw that Vacher had been under for a long time and hadn't resurfaced. "Young master, you must get out," You will die if you stay in the water any longer. Get him out. We must get him out." The old man, Hugo, laughed out loud in a gloating manner when he saw the increasingly urgent situation. He turned to the old man next to him and asked, "Barrymore, how long has that kid been in the river?" "It's been 7 minutes, sir," replied the old man. John Barrymore, the old man in the white suit who had just answered, was the head butler of the Baskerville family. Hearing that it had been 7 minutes, yet the child had not emerged, Mr. Hugo wore an amused expression. 7 minutes. He must have died. "Son, you're out now." Vatcher, still in the river, puffed his mouth and closed his eyes, holding his breath. Each wave of air bubbles kept rising. Was it Hugo's voice? "Do you think I give up so easily? I need to endure until the very end." However, with only the strength of a months-old child, Vatcher still couldn't bear it any longer. He opened his mouth wide, his eyes white, his arms and legs hanging down, no longer resisting. But in his subconscious, he still told himself that he had to endure, endure, endure. Gradually, that small body sank deep into the cold, dark water. It seemed like his life would end, again in such a tragic way, when a hand grabbed his feet and pulled him out of the water. It turned out to be Hugo's hand. He just pulled him up, looked at him, and said, "Look at this child. Being in the Styx River is not enough for him. He still wants a drink. He already has teeth. What is this child's name?" "Mr. Barrymore," the butler quickly answered it, "is young Master Vatcher Van Baskerville." Hugo looked at him with a mysterious, calculating gaze. "Vatcher, it seems that I have a very promising son." Vatcher gradually regained consciousness after being pulled up and turned upside down. He heard all of the words that his father said. In his heart, he thought, "Just be happy that you can still walk, Hugo. Right now, I need time to sharpen my fangs. When the time comes, I will bite your head off. The Baskerville family will disappear from history by my own hand. Vatcher Van Baskerville." Vatcher Van Baskerville, the illegitimate son of Hugo Le Baskerville. By the age of 8, he possessed a talent that warranted the label of a prodigy, but within his own family, it was merely considered acceptable. At the age of 20, he was assigned tasks such as intelligence, assassinations, or defeating enemy forces. At the age of 29, he began to stall compared to the talents of others and began to reach the limit of his swordsmanship. When he turned 30, the gate to the devil was opened and the invasion of the demons began from here. At the age of 35, he survived the apocalyptic era, having slain countless demons. He reached the age of 39 after the long war ended with the For Humanity, and at the age of 40, he received the title for his loyalty as a hound. Those rewards were slander following slander, and then his head was placed on the guillotine to end his life full of dedication with a tragic, unjust death. But paradoxically, Vatcher's life as a hound had indeed ended. Nevertheless, he was granted another chance at life, starting anew as a newborn baby. Slowly opening his eyes, he found himself in the nursery, secretly speculating that he had successfully passed the elderly Hugo's test and absorbed the waters of the Styx. Vatcher struggled to turn over, thinking that with this, he might have a better starting point. Suddenly, a nanny came in, holding a mysterious box in her hand, which she always had to keep the lid on, perhaps because she was afraid of something jumping out of it. She even uttered a few words, unaware that Vatcher could understand them all. "Oh my God, the madam is so unreasonable. Why did she ask me to put this thing in the cradle of the young master?" As soon as Vatcher heard the voice, he turned to see the nanny placing the mysterious box in his crib. He also heard her mention mistress. He wondered why the landlady gave gifts to an illegitimate child like him. Sure enough, after the nanny left, the box slowly opened, emitting a dark aura. After that, 2 snake heads gradually appeared, causing Vatcher to cautiously take a step back. These 2 giant snakes are 2 extremely rare blood snakes. They have elongated bodies, red eyes, and deadly poisonous fangs. They started approaching Vatcher and prepared to attack him. However, Vatcher was only momentarily startled at first. Soon after, he regained his composure, assuming a ready fighting stance. He also quickly grasped the source of this incident. There's no way these 2 exceedingly rare creatures were sent just to assassinate him. Not many people in Baskerville could be addressed as mistress. She must be trying to eliminate potential rivals for her own child, perhaps even risking harm to other infants in the remaining nurseries. At the very moment the 2 ferocious blood serpents lunged forward, Vatcher swiftly seized their necks before they could strike. His eyes were bloodshot with rage, and he thought to himself, just as the Baskervilles expected, I will end your lives with my own hands. Vatcher exerted more and more strength into his hands, which came not only from his will to survive against the two beasts, but also from his hatred for the Baskerville family. In the end, the two blood snakes were killed by Vatcher, who was still in the form of a child. The next day, the Baskervilles were filled with fear when they saw a child sleeping soundly amid the remains of the two blood snakes. On that day, the nanny was ordered to guard the child, who was tortured and executed. In the end, the reason for the deaths of the blood snakes remained a mystery to everyone. Only the young hound saw the truth. Time passed by, and 8 years had passed since the incident. Now, Vatcher was an 8-year-old boy. He was sitting in a classroom with his siblings listening to a man who could be considered a professor at the Baskerville family. All of the children in the classroom were sons of old Hugo. The voice of the man teaching the children rang out evenly in the room. Although he was like a teacher, he still kept a respectful way of addressing them. Young masters, he said, today we will learn about the stages of a swordsman. If a swordsman cannot imbue their mana into the blade, they will be called an apprentice. Swordsmen, once they can infuse their mana into their sword, even a little, they will be called a proficient swordsman. Once the mana on their sword can be released in the form of aura, they are called a consummate swordsman. And finally, when the aura stream can be gathered and can be transformed at will by the swordsman, they are called a master swordsman. The best swordsman in Baskerville, Sir Hugo, is also a master swordsman. When they heard this, the children in the classroom all opened their mouths in surprise. Only Vatcher, who harbored hatred for Hugo, was lost in thought. Currently, Hugo had become a master swordsman, and Vatcher had to regain all the strength he had before reverting to himself. Before the coming-of-age ceremony, Vatcher's contrasting attitude drew the attention of the teacher. The teacher pondered, young Master Vatcher seems to be deep in thought again. With the enhanced body he gained from immersing himself in the river Styx for 7 minutes, coupled with his analytical genius that surpasses ordinary people, his talents belong to a different class. Compared to the other young masters, the head of the family will be extremely excited to hear about the achievements young Master Vatcher has accomplished. Meanwhile, Vatcher was calculating in his head how many years it would take for him to kill Hugo. And of course, Vatcher's difference was not only noticed by the teacher. 3 other triplets in the same class also noticed him. They looked at him with their fiery red eyes, which looked very demonic. Later, when the class ended, the 3 triplets cornered Vatcher in the storage room. One of them pushed Vatcher and kept saying offensive words. Hey, you piece of trash, you're just an illegitimate bastard, but there are strange rumors about you, you know. The other 2 triplets echoed in agreement, you know. Then one of them continued, you immersed yourself in the river Styx for 7 minutes, and even killed 2 extremely poisonous blood snakes when you were just born. Vatcher remembered his past life. He knew these triplets very well. They were the ones who falsely accused him and stabbed him while he was trying to escape. They were nicknamed the Hugo Le Baskerville Trident. From left to right, their names are Highbrow Le Baskerville, Midbrow Le Baskerville, and Lowbrow Le Baskerville. They also had a habit of speaking in unison. For example, right now when Highbrow warned Vatcher not to play any tricks, the other 2 triplets echoed in agreement. Stop right there. Stop right there. They continued their routine of synchronized speech. One would speak, and the other 2 would follow. I don't think I have any sympathy for you. The other 2 triplets immediately chimed in. Neither do I, faced with the 3 brothers. Vatcher thought to himself that in 10 years, they would become extremely annoying enemies that he would have to face. It would be better if he warned and intimidated them now to prevent future troubles. Suddenly, Midbrow raised a dagger at Vatcher's face. After bathing in the river Styx, the body becomes as hard as cold steel, and it can no longer be injured by swords or spears, he said. I've been told this, so you won't die if I stab you, will you? Meanwhile, the other 2 were signaling each other, plotting something sinister against Vatcher. Lowbrow swiftly approached from behind and covered Vatcher's mouth and nose with his hand. He said in a cunning voice, you were able to last 7 minutes in the river Styx. I'll eat my own hand if you can even last 3 minutes. They thought Vatcher was weak and helpless, but in his mind, he had already calculated everything. He guessed that what people said might be true. Children can be more cruel than adults. He decided to play along with them for a while. In the first minute, Highbrow and Midbrow were still quite enthusiastic, secretly laughing at the thought that the rumors might not be true. After 3 minutes, these two started to look uneasy. He can endure for quite a while, they thought, longer than expected. And when the clock reached 10 minutes, the whole gang was horrified by Vatcher's incredible endurance, wondering if the rumors were indeed true. These two then said, "It's not fun anymore. Let him go. Let him go." As soon as Lowbrow removed his hand from Vatcher's mouth, he screamed in horror, and Vatcher spat out a finger. "What the hell are you doing here?" Vatcher looked up, wiped the blood off his mouth, and said, cunningly, "Why, didn't you say you would eat your own hand just now?" Faced with such a terrifying Vatcher, all three brothers were sweating profusely, but they still tried to act tough. "Ha! Ha! Even if you could do that, we wouldn't be afraid of you," they said in unison. Only the youngest brother, Lowbrow, was afraid. When the two older brothers saw that the youngest brother did not join in, they looked at him with questioning eyes. The youngest brother continued to cry, "My hand is cut off." Knowing that they were at a disadvantage, the three brothers began to look for an excuse to retreat. "Calm down, little brother," they said. "Let's go ask the priest to reattach it." Of course, Vatcher would not let them go easily, especially since they had just started a fight with him first. He said, "Who said you could leave?" Immediately, the brother with the dagger charged at Vatcher, angrily shouting, "You bastard! Have you forgotten that we're a year older than you?" But the tip of his dagger could only tear through Vatcher's clothes, not penetrate his skin, which had been turned to steel. Vatcher immediately grabbed his hand and twisted it backwards, calmly saying, as the brother screamed in pain, "I think you've forgotten something, brother. This is Baskerville. If you have enough strength and talent, age is no longer important. Let's play this game to the end, my brothers." Then Vatcher smiled cunningly, with his eyes bloodshot with bloodlust.